The scent of jasmine and fresh polish still lingered in the air, a reminder of Serena's obsessive cleaning frenzy. She'd been like this lately, a whirlwind of tidying and organization after months of, well, I wasn't entirely sure. It was as if she was trying to bury something beneath piles of perfectly folded laundry and surfaces that gleamed under the harsh light. That Sunday, she decided the living room needed a new centerpiece, a large framed photograph balanced precariously on the mantel. It was a tribute to her so-called work family, as she often put it. I had always found her admiration for her colleagues a little excessive, even borderline theatrical. The photo itself was standard office fare, 4 smiles, stiff poses, and an atmosphere of corporate detachment. Yet, Serena gazed at it with such pride, her eyes sparkling like she had just unveiled a priceless work of art. "They're the best team, Simon," she said, her voice too loud, too quick. "I'm so lucky to work with such a great group of people." I scanned the image mostly out of politeness. There was Carla, always stressed, her eyes wide in what could only be described as perpetual anxiety. Then there was Tom, the team manager, a man who looked like he lived on coffee for the past decade. And David, the IT guy, whose exhaustion was evident in every line of his face. And then there was him, a man I didn't recognize, standing just a little too close to Serena, his hand nearly grazing her shoulder. He was taller than the rest, with a mischievous grin and eyes that seemed to pierce through the glossy surface of the frame. His name tag, slightly blurry, read Jace. "Who's that?" I asked, casually pointing at the image. My tone was nonchalant, but something about the photo had caught my attention. The smile faltered from Serena's face. It was as if someone had suddenly flicked off a light switch. The laughter that had been bubbling in her chest just moments before froze in her throat. The room seemed to grow heavier, the playful atmosphere dissipating into the air like smoke in the wind. Her gaze snapped to me, wide-eyed, her mouth opening in shock as if I'd just spoken in a foreign language. "Jace," she finally whispered, her voice fragile and distant, he knew. "Just started a few weeks ago," she stammered. "A few weeks ago." That was around the time her late nights at the office had become a regular occurrence. The time she'd begun to pull away, the time I'd started sleeping on the edge of the bed, trying not to disturb her slumber, which felt as distant as the moon. My heart, which had been steady just moments before, now felt like a heavy weight pressing against my chest. A cold dread started to climb up my throat, making it hard to breathe. It wasn't just the fact that she was lying to me. It was the way she was lying, so effortless, so calculated, that made the blood in my veins turn to ice. The picture remained on the mantel, mocking me week after week. I'd catch Serena staring at it, a faraway look in her eyes. She'd touched the frame as if it were some priceless artifact, her gaze lingering just a second too long on Jace's face. That's when the plans began to take shape, a dark seed of suspicion taking root in my mind. I had always been a quiet, easygoing guy, someone who avoided confrontation and buried my feelings deep. But this was different. This felt like a betrayal, one that cut deeper than anything I could have imagined. I started subtly. I'd ask about Jace at work in an offhand way, watching her reactions carefully. Each time, she'd flinch, her face a perfect mask of indifference. I dug deeper. I found his LinkedIn profile, Jace Carter, a rising star, sales director, charming, successful, the type of guy who knew he was good-looking and used it to his advantage. I memorized his face, his details, his online presence. It wasn't long before I realized I was becoming obsessed. Then I found it, a message buried deep within her deleted WhatsApp conversations. One text stood out. "Can't wait until tonight, Jace." My hand trembled as I read it, the weight of the realization pressing down on me that I found it. My fingers trembled, not from anger, but from something deeper, something that felt like a total eclipse of my soul. The weight of it all crushed me, yet at the same time, it fueled a resolve, a thirst for vengeance. My plan was simple. I wouldn't confront Serena, not yet. First, I wanted to make Jace pay. I wanted to shatter the arrogant world he'd built for himself. I tracked his schedule through Serena's phone, piecing together his usual gym routine. I joined that gym, purposely getting to know him in passing. We talked about work, about sales, about casual things. He seemed like an empty shell of a man, a walking cliché. The day I chose was a Tuesday, a few weeks after I discovered the text. It was raining heavily, the kind of downpour that mirrored the storm raging inside me. Jace was leaving the gym, his face flushed, his hair damp from the rain. I intercepted him by his car. "Jace, right?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, my smile forced, eyes sharp. He looked at me, a flicker of recognition passing through his eyes. "Yeah, you're Simon, right? Serena's husband." "That's right," I said, and then without another word, I punched him. The force of the blow sent him reeling, his face contorting in shock and pain. He hit the wet pavement with a thud, gasping for air. He looked at me in horror. "What the hell?" he gasped. I grabbed him by the shirt, hoisting him up, my own rage now bubbling to the surface. "You and my wife, you pathetic, spineless excuse of a man," I spat. The quiet, introverted Simon I used to be was gone. The man who looked back at me from my reflection was now consumed by fury. He struggled, trying to push me away, but I was relentless. Another punch connected with his jaw, and he staggered back. Crashing into his car, I didn't care that the rain was soaking us or that other people were staring. I was consumed by the need to break him. I slammed him against the car again, the metal shuddering under the impact. I rained blow after blow on him, each one fueled by the months of betrayal. The nights I spent awake wondering what had become of my life, that I didn't care about Serena anymore, not really. This wasn't about her. This was about Jace, about the violation of trust, the smug satisfaction he wore whenever he was around me. By the time I was done, he was a mess. Blood dripped from his nose, his lip was split, and his eyes were wide with terror. I stood over him, panting, my own knuckles throbbing. "Stay away from her," I said, my voice low and menacing. "Stay away from my life." Then I walked away, leaving him crumpled on the ground, the rain washing away his shame. The next day, I walked into Serena's office during her lunch break. I hadn't spoken to her since the confrontation with Jace, not a word. She looked up from her computer, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and guilt, don't you? She whispered, her voice barely audible. I simply nodded. I didn't want to hear her excuses, her lies. I grabbed the framed photo from her desk, the one she was so proud of, the one with Jace in it. I smashed it against the edge of her desk, the glass shattering into 1,000 pieces, sending shards everywhere. The picture fell out, torn and crumpled, Jace's face ripped apart. "I'm done, Serena," I said, my voice cold and hard. "I'm moving out. You can have your perfect work life. Just leave me alone." I dropped the broken frame on the floor and walked out of the office without looking back. That night, I packed a bag, taking only the essentials. I found a small apartment on the other side of town, a clean slate. I'd lost Serena, yes, but I had also gained something, a strange sense of peace. The weight that had been crushing me lifted, replaced by a quiet resolve. I had confronted my demons. I had taken my revenge. I might be alone now, but I was also free. Free from her lies, her betrayals. Free from Jace's smug grin. I was finally free to rebuild my life, piece by piece. And in a strange way, that was enough.